Welcome, everybody. Can somebody give me a thumbs up that they can hear me? Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, here we go. Perfect. Thank you, Alyssa. I appreciate that. So we're excited to have you guys here today. It's a very large group and there's probably more people trickling in. So I'm going to jump right into the presentation. But I think this is a really timely and important topic and one that we hope that you guys will get a lot out of. In terms of just kind of housekeeping ground rules, I love questions, we love comments, we love making these interactive dialogues. You know, we have some ideas and some input, but my guess is you guys do as well. So if you've got a suggestion or something that's worked really well, don't hesitate to share it either in the chat or unmute and let me know and we can turn it over to you. But also we'll have some time at the end for Q&A where you guys can also share your questions and thoughts that way. So without further ado, let me go ahead and share my screen once again and we'll jump right in. All right, and just one more thumbs up. Can you guys see my screen? Perfect. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started then. So I provided you guys just a little bit of background on who Paragus is. We've been around for 20 years. We're doing what we've been doing today for the last 11 of those 20 years. We are an employee-owned company. We are located, our headquarters, I should say, in Hadley, Massachusetts, with a second office in Worcester, Massachusetts. We're just about 60 full-time employees, and we're serving right now about 150 small businesses, ranging from as small as 5 employees to as large as several hundred employees. Our core purpose, as we always like to say, is this idea of making IT fun. For those of you who tuned in early and saw the short little video, hopefully you got a little bit of a sense of that as we made a kind of a mock of an old 80s training video. We just don't think IT has to be boring. We don't think it has to suck. And we want to try to introduce some humor, some levity, some fun into the topic. And today's presentation is a great example of that. Leveraging technology to make people's lives easier, to improve experiences, to save time and money. All of that I would put under the bucket of trying to make IT fun. Quick overview of how we're structured as a company. We do have 4 distinct departments. We have our on-demand support, which is our help desk, our security and compliance team, which helps keeps our clients safe and handle all the different compliances that are thrown at them. Our strategic planning folks, which help our clients think about how to use technology and how to use it better. And then our newest department, our business automation team, who helps our clients use technology to be more efficient. And that's a big part of the conversation today. And then the foundation of our 4 pillars of IT is our products department, which help to make sure that when we do things, we do them on time, on budget, and we do that to the scope that we agreed upon. So without any further ado, let's get to the point. Let me tell you why you're here today. Everyone's got a lot on their plate. There's a lot of other places you could be, especially on a Friday afternoon after a busy week. But why have we gotten you today, and why do we think this is an important topic to share with you? So I'm going to fly through a couple of slides just to give you some context to the conversation, but then I want to get to the root of what we're actually here to talk about. So since the pandemic started, we've had a disruption of, it was originally 3.5 million. I think the latest number I heard is it's predicted to be over 4 million people have left the workforce. That causes a pretty big ripple effect through the economy. As a result, we've got more and more people wearing more hats, trying to juggle a lot of things, trying to keep up with everything that's being thrown at them and all the many challenges that they face. That is leading to a lot of workplace stress, a lot of kind of feeling overwhelmed, a lot of feeling like there's so much going on. What do we do with this? How do we keep up with everything? On top of that, we've got increasing wages. So as wages go up, that means that we have more pressure to get more output from those wages. In some cases, prices have gone up, but in a lot of cases only gone up enough to keep up with labor, which means there's more and more pressure on employers to figure out how to get more out of the resources they have. Compounding that even further is many new demands from employees, demands about where they work, demands about how they work, demands about technology and which technology they have to do their jobs. There's a lot of pressure being put on employers to make changes, to disrupt things that maybe have been true for a long time. I can't count, how many employers have used to say to us, we're never going to go remote. We don't need a remote strategy. We have no interest in going remote. And then obviously that all changed. And I don't mean to rehash a topic that's been talked to death about, but it is a good example or analogy for change is sometimes unexpected and sometimes forced upon us. And as a result, we need to be prepared for it and ready for it. Compounding this even further is a very competitive labor market. We're starting to see that soften a little bit, but there is still a lot of people competing for, a lot of employers competing for the right talent. And so as part of that, you've got to have the right competitive offering. You have to have the right value proposition, and that adds to that pressure that employers are facing. Now, put that right in the middle of the fact that we are in the middle of the fourth industrial revolution. There's a lot going on right now. And if you're not sure what we mean by the fourth industrial revolution, the easiest way to think of it is the revolution of intelligence. It's all about these factors. It's about the existence of mobile devices, cloud computing, IoT, augmented reality, all of these elements that are creating this new era where information is everywhere, it's instantly accessible. We don't question or ponder or wonder anymore. We say, hey Siri, and we get an answer within seconds. It's a very different world that we're raising our companies in and running our companies in. And it's a different workforce that's used to a world that looks more like this. And this is just getting started. If you look at kind of where we are right now, this technology growth curve is just beginning to bend in the upward direction. Every year, we're seeing incremental changes in technology, which means a doubling effect. Every year, there's twice as much as there was the previous year for many of the things that we can measure and track. And that incremental effect is going a lot faster than our ability to adapt and keep up with it. And that's creating this need to do things smarter, better. We can't onboard employees, for example, the way we used to. We can't do many things the way we used to because the rate of growth is just so exponential that it's not going to work. And we've talked about this in previous conversations, but I think it's useful context for this conversation as well. So meanwhile, we're all kind of stuck trying to figure out how to react, how to strategize, where we're going, what our plans are. Every time we create plans, it seems like something changes, and we're just doing our best to keep up with it. As if all that wasn't enough, there's also an increase in volume of acquisitions and consolidations, buyouts, PE groups. They've really done a significant amount of activity in the past 36 months, which has changed things. And what it's really changed is it's changed the availability of resources. These larger companies or these smaller companies who just got very bountiful injections of fresh capital have access to resources that maybe a company that has not gone through a recent change in ownership or change in control might not have access to. And that puts even more pressure on the kinds of companies that we support that are probably in attendance today to figure out, how do we keep up? How do we try to outpace or at least keep up pace with these firms that have more resources, more tenure, more experience, more access than we do? All right, exhausted? The point of that is not to be doom and gloom. It really is just to provide some context for the rest of our conversation. These forces are real. These are forces that probably everybody in this call can relate to in some way or another. And they're all things that we're experiencing at both a micro level and a macro level. And they matter because if we ignore them and hope they're going to go away, I think we're going to find ourselves on the wrong side of history. But if we embrace them, if we look at them as the future and we figure out, how do we build a company that incorporates those realities, we can be very successful. And I think more successful than even some of the bigger firms because we can adjust more nimbly and faster than they can. And that's a very, very big competitive advantage, and one that I encourage you to embrace and lean into. So for the rest of this presentation, I want to ask this question. What if? What if doing certain tasks in our business didn't have to be so hard, didn't have to take so much time, didn't have to be so time consuming? What if we could use our resources more efficiently? What if the work we didn't want to do didn't need to be done by people, but could be done by machines or automation? And we could devote our staff to doing the things that really matter. You know, there's this kind of analogy that we've probably all heard to the point that it's becoming a cliche. But what percentage of your day-to-day activities actually move the needle? what percent of the investment you're making in your resources actually has a long-term impact or even a short-term impact on the numbers, on the metrics, on the outcomes that genuinely matter. Whether you're a nonprofit trying to serve a community, whether you're a for-profit trying to return value to shareholders, whether you're trying to take care of your employees or provide impact in the world, what percent of your activities are genuinely, truly aligned with that outcome? And that's where I think automation can play such a game-changing role. And while sometimes it might feel overwhelming or even scary, I think it's exciting. I think it's invigorating. I think it's thrilling, because I think we're going to be able to maximize the impact we can have in the future with less resources or have a greater impact, however you want to think about that equation. And that's why we created our automation department. We think business automation is the future. And we think that business automation cannot be and should not be made exclusively to the enterprise size organizations. They've been looking at things like RPO and all kinds of other automation technologies for probably the last 5 years. And they've made some great strides and had some very significant impact. But that same accessibility to this automation, to this technology, has to be more equitable. It's got to be made available to the small business community because they need it maybe even more so than the enterprises need it. And that's become our passion. That's become one of our key focuses, is how do we take automation and make it simple and make it easy and allow clients to use it on a day-to-day basis to run their businesses more effectively and deliver more impact to the bottom line, whatever that bottom line is, whether it be financial or whether it be impact on the community or impact on your employees. But isn't automation super expensive? And I think this is probably the first common misconception we have about automation, is it's inaccessible because it's so complicated and therefore so expensive. So that's where a lot of this conversation really begins. That was true for a very long time, and it wasn't accessible or approachable to probably most of the people on this call, but that has since changed. It is now much more widely available and something that most businesses can and should be taking advantage of. The next myth we always get, isn't it really, really complicated? Don't I need to hire a team of people, new resources, create new jobs? And where am I going to pay for those? And how am I going to find those people? And do those people even exist in Western Massachusetts or Central Massachusetts? And the answer there is it's not that complicated. This is the kind of stuff that we can do for our clients in relatively short order, and then train their staff, if they want to be, on how to maintain those automations internally, or at least be able to use them on a day-to-day basis to make their jobs easier. And then the other myth that we always hear is, doesn't it take a ton of time to implement? Like, isn't this something that I need to focus on for like the next 3 years? And I'm going to have a weekly meeting, and we're going to have vision statements, and we're going to have all these complicated conversations around how do we leverage automation? That's also a myth. There's a lot of implementations that can be done in very short order. We have gone into companies and automated something in the course of a day, where we've met in the morning, they've said, this is what we want to do. The thing they want to do is so easy, we can have it completed by the end of business that day. And as of the next morning, they are not doing something that they used to have to do. That's a transformational change. If you can just get rid of things effectively, efficiently, and quickly, you can change your business for the better. You can change your organization for the better, which again, aligns more with the impact you're trying to have, however you want to measure that impact. So how is all this possible? Where is all this coming from? Why are we able to say that this is now cheap, fast, and easy? A lot of it has to do with Microsoft. And say what you will about Microsoft, my opinion around that company has changed many times in my 20 plus years in this industry. From hating them to loving them to being very indifferent about them. But they're a huge piece of what is happening in this space, and they're a huge piece of the democratization of this space. If it wasn't for Microsoft, most of this technology would still be inaccessible to many businesses. And by no means, they're not the only player. There are other players in the space that are also doing it at the scale that Microsoft is doing it for the types of businesses Microsoft is doing it. And I don't want you to take away from this presentation today that you have to use Microsoft, it's Microsoft or bust. That's not true. However, let me give you a really good picture of why Microsoft does make a lot of sense. For most organizations, they're already using some Microsoft products. They're either using the Office suite, Word, Excel, Outlook, PowerPoint. For many organizations, their email is hosted in Microsoft. They're using Microsoft 365, Microsoft Online Exchange to host all of their email communications. For many businesses, they've started using Microsoft Teams as their communication and collaboration platform. Many businesses have started to adopt SharePoint. The more Microsoft products you're using, the stronger you should be focusing on automation. Because where Microsoft has the advantage and what allows Microsoft to be so quick to deploy is that everything is already there. All of your data, your communication, your alerts, everything is already in that platform, if that's true about your business. And therefore, it's really, really quick to deploy. If your business is not as deep into the kind of well with Microsoft, maybe you're more of a Google company that's using Google Drive and Google Workspace, you might be looking at automation a little bit differently. You might be using either some of Google's tools, which are okay, or you might be using some of the great third-party tools that are out there that integrate well with Google. For you, it might not be quite as quick to deploy because you're not starting from the same entry point as a company who's already really in deep with Microsoft would be. But it doesn't mean this isn't accessible. It doesn't mean it's going to take you infinitely longer. It's maybe just a little bit more work to figure out what your roadmap is and what your technology stack is going to look like. But this is accessible to everyone. The second reason we like Microsoft for this is it's easy to use. Most of us grew up using Microsoft products. Most of us are very familiar with Microsoft interfaces. We know Clippy well. We've gotten used to those technologies, and therefore introducing an automation using a platform, a vernacular that we're already comfortable with, does make the adoption easier and it makes the rollout easier. And then finally, if you are already in bed with Microsoft, for better or for worse, it's going to make this incredibly cost effective. Because what we find with the vast majority of clients we are working with, they're already paying for the licensing that they need to be able to do this automation. In other words, there is no new net cost to the organization above the labor of setting this up. That's not going to be true if you have to go with a third-party platform. You're going to have to pay for that third-party platform. And the costs range dramatically from relatively inexpensive, but very much do-it-yourself, to a lot more kind of out-of-the-box instant automation, but much more pricey. Microsoft has this unique advantage of, if you are already a Microsoft customer at a certain level or higher, most of the technology we would use to automate processes within your business, you're already paying for. And so again, this is not meant to be a Microsoft sales pitch, but if you happen to be using Microsoft, all three of these apply to you. If you're using another platform, again, that doesn't mean this doesn't make sense. It doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing it, but it might be a little bit more costly. It might take a little bit longer to deploy, and it might be just a little bit more of a learning curve to get spun up on it. Again, not a deterrent, but just a reason why we're so excited about customers who are already working with Microsoft deeply, because it makes all of this so much easier. All right, so I've given you the background and given you the context. Now let's connect this to onboardings and offboardings. That is the theme of this presentation. That's why we've brought you here today. As you've probably already ascertained, this conversation doesn't need to be exclusively about onboardings and offboardings. Onboardings and offboardings provide a great proxy for this conversation around automation, because every business has to onboard and offboard employees at some point in time. And so it's one that we can categorically use as an example and not worry about alienating any particular audience. There are other automations that might be more specific to one group of businesses or another, but this is something that we all share. All right, so let's dive in so we can get to the content and then open it up for questions and comments, and I can show you guys some of the things that we've been doing. So here's the kind of, for the next 10 minutes or so, I want you to be in visionary mode. I want you to think about a world in which the story I'm going to tell you is the reality of your business. Now, maybe not every single thing that I present is going to be applicable to you, but I want you to get in the mindset of imagining what's possible. The point of these next few slides is to portray a hypothetical scenario that could be true for your business, or maybe certain aspects of it could be true for your business. But the point is to get you thinking differently about the way you're doing something today and imagining how far you could take it down the road of automation if that was the route you decided to go in. So let's start with bringing on an employee through the application process. So the first thing I want you to do is imagine them applying entirely online. And I don't just mean submitting a resume. I mean filling out a questionnaire that is designed to help you screen that candidate, asking very pointed questions that are going to be your initial process for determining if this is a good fit for your company. From there, I want you to imagine an AI bot screening your candidates. They're going to look at the resume, they're going to look at the answers to your questions, and they're going to use artificial intelligence to grade your candidates. They're not going to reject them or hire them. That would be a few years from now, maybe. But what the AI can do is it can grade all of your candidate applications and put them in order from A to F so that it makes it easier for your team to review them. Then your HR team reviews the graded resumes, starting at the top of the pile and working down to figure out the ones that they think are right. Any candidate they think is right, they press a single button on. When they press that button, it automatically contacts the candidate, either through text or email, says, we would like you to invite you in for an interview. Here's a link you can click on to see available times that we have for an interview slot. Click on the one that works for you. And when you click on that, it will automatically send both the candidate and your HR team a calendar invite for that date and time, as well as a Zoom link or whatever platform you're using to do your online interviews. Then HR conducts the interview. And they're going to do that by both recording notes, but also asking scripted questions and recording their answers to the scripted questions in an HRS platform. So you're going to have a standard list of maybe 15 questions you want to ask every candidate, and you're going to record your answers in specific boxes for those questions. This is going to allow the HRS system to, again, apply AI and grade the answers and provide more context and background around how the candidates compare throughout your interview process. At the end of the interview, HR is going to decide, do I want to pass or fail this candidate? If they fail the candidate, a very polite email automatically goes out to them, letting them know, we really appreciate their interest. Unfortunately, it's not the right fit or the right time. If they're passed, a celebratory email goes out to the candidate, letting them know you'd like to schedule the next round of interview. And again, providing a link to make that very easy that has dates and times. And maybe this one's an in-person interview as opposed to a remote one. When the candidate schedules that, both the hiring manager and the candidate get an Outlook invite, and they know exactly when and when that interview is going to be. The hiring manager gets to review all the notes from the first round in the HRS system and can even see the grading of the AI applied so they can get a better sense of maybe where they want to dig in a little bit more. If there was an area the candidate scored low on, that might become a focal point for the second interview. Rather than just asking another set of scripted questions, it allows you to dig deeper and learn from the first interview and have some continuity in your process. At the end of that interview, again, prompted to either pass or fail. Fail sends out a nice polite email. Pass automatically triggers an event where the HR person is prompted to draft an offer letter. When the offer letter fields are entered, basically what you need to enter, maybe salary, vacation, start date. Beyond that, the AI system builds the offer letter using all the template content, does it very quickly and easily, sends it out to DocuSign, as well as a notification to the candidate that you have extended an offer and ask them to take a review and respond to it. HR can give them a call and say, hey, I want to make sure you saw the email, take a look at it in our system. And then if you approve, we will move on to our onboarding process. So then we talk about the pre-onboarding. Again, I still want you this an imagined scenario of kind of picturing what this could be for your organization. So as soon as the candidate signs the offer letter, it automatically triggers a series of events to happen. First, an email sent to the employee with all the electronic forms they need to submit. Maybe their background check, maybe an authorization to a drug test, maybe starting to fill out their I-9, whatever else is that you need to collect. It's all done electronically. They can fill out the fields and submit it electronically. So there's no filling it out by paper, printing it out, scanning it in, putting it in a file folder somewhere. Forget all that. It also might give them a link to figure out where the nearest drug screening location is so they can get all that information taken care of in advance, and maybe even request them to take a photo of their driver's license or their passport so you can upload that into your HRS system. Second, the candidate is automatically added into your IT system, meaning as soon as that offer letter is accepted, it triggers that user to be created in your system, assign the correct permissions, join to all the right distribution groups and all the right teams, assign access to all the correct shares and all the correct mailboxes, gives them an email address, creates them a password, fills out their profile with their title, their phone number, their manager's name, and everything else. And all of this is triggered automatically just based on the fact that they signed the offer letter and the offer was for this level position. The system takes all that information and does everything else without even having to call IT. It just happens in the background. And then the third event is the applicant tracking system communicates with your payroll system to set up the new hire, trigger the appropriate tasks to make sure they're set up correctly in your payroll system so that they're going to get paid and onboarded correctly. And then fourth, maybe the most exciting piece, is an onboarding planner is created that contains all of the internal steps that can't be automated, but are needed to properly prepare and onboard that employee. So this could be things like the facility manager creating a door access code, or the procurement team ordering a new laptop. It could be the building manager blocking off time on their calendar. It could be the HR manager blocking off time on their calendar to do things like the HR onboarding, or maybe even the HR person getting their desk set up. All these little tasks that we need to do to get ready for somebody's first day are recorded in a planner. And for those of you who don't know what Planner is a very simple task management tool that is built into Microsoft 365. It allows you to create a list of things that need to be done, assign each of those tasks to a specific person, and also assign a due date, which will then send an email to the person who you've assigned the task to, and will add it to that person's personal to-do list via Microsoft To Do. When they complete the task, it will check it off in Planner so that whomever's overseeing the onboarding process will be able to have visibility into exactly what tasks need to be completed, who they're assigned to, when they're due, and if they've been completed yet or not. For things like employee onboardings where the steps are the same each time, we can even build a template planner that we then automatically make a copy of each time somebody is hired and automatically assign the tasks and due dates appropriate aligned with the start date. So for example, we build the template. What gets triggered is the copying of that template, the customizing it for that particular employee's onboarding, the assignment of the tasks and the due dates. And all of a sudden I get a bunch of tasks assigned to me by the system that say, hey, this person's starting, here's all the things that you need to do to get ready for that start date. And then we're going to take it one step further. Now let's look at the actual onboarding process itself. So now you're getting ready for the big day. From here, the system is going to create a second planner, but this one is going to be for the employee themselves. It's going to contain a collection of tasks that are grouped into different buckets. For example, what do you want the employee to complete by day 1, by week 1, maybe weeks 2 through 4, maybe weeks 4 through 6, and then maybe weeks 6 through 12. That's typically how we think about onboardings, but you can set it up however you want to set it up. These tasks could be things like reading company processes, shadowing other members of your team, reading specific books, watching training videos, filling out additional onboarding paperwork, or even for some fun stuff like getting to know their team better, or going on an on-site or doing something to integrate themselves into the culture in the company. This planner can also contain things that are going to be assigned to people like HR, maybe reviewing the employee handbook with the new hire, or maybe a task assigned to the new hire's manager to create a one-on-one calendar invite that's recurring for them to provide check-ins, or maybe to give them an orientation on how to use your software platform. Again, all of these tasks can be templatized so that when you have that hire, it automatically gets created and assigned, and everybody knows exactly what they need to do. And again, you can monitor it from a high-level standpoint so HR knows exactly where that new hire is in their 90-day onboarding. Are they off track? Are they on track? What haven't they completed yet? Who's responsible for making sure that gets done? Next, the system can begin assigning trainings from your LMS. For those of you who are not familiar with an LMS, it stands for a Learning Management System. Basically, an LMS is an online training tool where you can create and assign courses to employees. The courses are typically a combination of videos and quizzes that help to teach a specific skill, but also make sure that you're measuring retention, because managers can see what trainings an employee watched, which they actually completed, and whether or not they passed the test at the end of the training, and really confirm that they gained the knowledge or learned what you wanted them to take out of it. And then finally, the system can even go ahead and schedule the employee's 90-day performance review, put the calendar invite for them and their manager, and even send out instructions to both the manager and the employee as the date approaches, letting them know the agenda for that meeting and what to prepare for in advance. And then let's just say we have to go the other direction, which is to offboard an employee. Well, that can be a frustrating experience. At least we can try to make the process of doing so a lot easier. We would start by creating another planner. But this one will have all of the steps that need to happen to properly offboard an employee, from collecting their equipment to conducting exit interview to filling out forms, maybe providing information for things like COBRA. Again, we have a planner. We assign the tasks to the employee, to HR, to their manager, to anybody else who needs to be involved in that. And then we can oversee and track it and looking for any step that can be fully automated and fully automating those items. So that's kind of the imagination portion of what I wanted you to see. What I thought I would share with you just kind of briefly is maybe a visual depiction of what an element of this could look like. So we at Paragus really like to, we call it eat our own dog food, which is basically just an expression that means practice what we preach. If I'm here telling you you should onboard your automate your employee onboarding experience, then it's easier for me to do so if we've done so ourselves and I can tell you that it works. And so what I'll show you in just a second is some of the ways in which we've implemented technologies like this here. Every company is going to do it a little bit differently, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. You certainly don't need to do all of the steps I just listed off. But what you do want to do is you want to figure out what aspects make sense for your business. I cannot imagine a business that can't benefit from some level of onboarding or offboarding automation. And the question is just, what's the right level for your company? Where does this apply? So let me just show you some examples. So we use Microsoft Teams as the interface for a lot of what we do. It means that going back to the conversation around Microsoft making it easy, rather than having to have our staff learn a new system, a new platform, log into a new software, one of the things that we like about Microsoft is we can use Microsoft Teams as the front end for a ton of the things that we're doing, which means that they stay in the same system. They're not learning a new system in order to do their jobs. And so I'm going to show you a couple of things. The first I want to show you is what one of our onboarding planner templates look like. So imagine this being kind of the master template that's going to get created when we hire a new employee. And as I kind of told you earlier, what we've done is we've broken things out into week 1, week 2, weeks 3 through 6, and weeks 6 through 12. As you can see, in each of these buckets, we have all kinds of tasks. And what we've done is we've used some color coding to help the new employee understand what's being assigned to them. If it says talent manager, that means that it's our HR person who's going to be reviewing this with them. If it says link, it means that there's a link in this task to something we want them to look at. In this case, review the Paragus handbook. I can click on that. I can see the link to the handbook. I can open it up. I can review it, and I can know that ultimately I need the talent manager to sign off that we've reviewed the employee handbook together. And so this same thing is going to happen all the way through week 6 through 12, and then their orientation day that they're going to have at some point during their first 90 days. And you can see that this can get relatively granular. It could be things that are going to be done in person versus things that are going to be a video that we want them to watch, things that are self-guided versus things that they should be doing with their manager. We can use all kinds of tags and flags and colors to really help the candidate understand what it is that we're expecting of them and what it is we want them to do. But now let's shift gears a little bit and look at an actual active onboarding. And what I like about this is I can take an actual employee who's being onboarded, and I can go to the view that's going to give me a sense of kind of where this employee's onboarding stands right now. So if I go to the chart view, I get this picture, which is great. This employee's onboarding is doing phenomenal. They have completed 57 tasks. There's only 2 tasks remaining. The tasks that are remaining are on the IT committee members, and we just need to follow up with those IT committee members to see what hasn't happened. In this case, they haven't had their new hire orientation, and we haven't ordered their business cards yet. Those are 2 easy things that we can take care of, and once those 2 things are complete, this employee onboarding will be all set and completed. So this level of granularity where I can go through individual employees and see the progress and progression of their onboarding really helps to make sure that we're not letting things slip through the cracks. 60 tasks complete, one was done late, but everything is complete at this point. This is one task remaining, which is we need to confirm their new workstation was set up correctly with the new hire. So again, I'm just giving you a small sample. I'm just scratching the surface, and I'm only showing you the things that couldn't be completely automated. The things that could be completely automated, you're not even seeing here. What you're seeing are the things that we wanted to do manually or needed to do manually, but we wanted to provide insight and tracking into in a very automated way. And if you go one step further, this is looking at it kind of from maybe the HR manager's perspective. From the employee's perspective, they live in this thing called tasks, which used to be called Planner or Microsoft To Do. They've changed the name a couple of times, which is one of the fun challenges of working with Microsoft. But anything that's been assigned to me from any one of these planners is all going to be consolidated and centralized into one place. The benefit of that is I don't need to go into each one of those employee onboardings. I don't need to bounce around into all those different planners and find everything that was assigned to Delcy Bean. Everything that's assigned to Delcy Bean is just going to show up right here. And as soon as I do that task, I'm going to click it off here. And when I click it off here, it's going to complete it in the planner. So I, as an employee, as a to-doer of the to-dos, just live in this assigned to me bucket. I get all of my things done. And as I check them off, as I show the completion right here, it will sync with everything else. And you can even automate notifications that maybe send an email or a trigger or phone notification to the HR manager saying, hey, Delcy just completed these 5 tasks on this employee's onboarding. We thought you wanted to know. And you could summarize that daily. You could have it be every time you complete something. There's all, your imagination is really your only limit in how you can automate and present all this information to your team throughout the company. So hopefully what I've accomplished in the first 40 minutes or so is starting to set some light bulbs off for you. The point of today's presentation isn't necessarily to teach you exactly what you should be doing or how to do it. The point of today's presentation is really just to get you thinking about the concept of automation and using the employee onboarding experience as a great proxy for that conversation. It's a great use case that's widely applicable. So what we'd love to have you kind of leaving here thinking about is how can I leverage automation either specifically within the onboarding offboarding process, or maybe to a broader point, maybe onboarding and offboarding is not your biggest pain. Maybe it's customer onboarding. Maybe it's the way you're doing an internal process. Maybe it's the way certain information is shared or documented. With one of our clients, the biggest thing they needed help with was automating their mileage reimbursement program because they had hundreds of employees in the field submitting mileage reimbursement requests every single day, and it was a very manual process. We're using onboarding as a proxy, but think about where this is most applicable to you, where the biggest pain is, and where automation might be able to help you stay ahead of the growth curve as other organizations are implementing these technologies around you. So the question is, where do you go from here? And that's where we always want you leaving these presentations, leaving these webinars, hopefully feeling like you have some direction. The direction I would challenge you in is looking at what in your business is most right, most eligible to be automated. And it doesn't have to be the thing that's going to have the biggest impact. I think some organizations get hung up on, let's do the really big thing first. It might not be the really big thing. It might just be one annoying process that is impacting 1 or 2 employees, but it's really easy to automate. And it's a very quick, easy win that can start to build momentum and traction. So when we think about automation, whether it is employee onboarding or offboarding, or it's the way you're processing invoices, or it's the way you're doing mileage reimbursement requests, look for that thing in your organization that maybe isn't the biggest thing, but that would have a big impact and is not wildly complicated. And it doesn't involve hundreds of people. Sometimes the fewer people impacted, the easier it is to get that automation completed. And that can build momentum and traction that you can then carry forward to maybe work on some of the bigger projects that might take a little bit more time or might be more inclusive, which means a lot more input and voices, which does elongate the timetable. So that's my ask of you. That's my kind of takeaway that I hope you leave here today with as you go into the weekend, as you go into the latter half of your Friday, really starting to reflect on it's 2023. What can we do differently this year that is going to move us forward and bring us into a more automated world compared to where we have been for the past 5 years, 10 years, however long you've been in business, however long you've been doing that thing that way. And then obviously, I want you to know that we're here. We are more than happy to guide you through this process. For clients that don't know where they want to automate, we have an automation assessment package. That package allows us to come in and help you figure out what you should be automating. For those of you who already know what you want to automate, we are here and happy to help you figure out how to get that automation done cost effectively and quickly. And automation is one of the only services that we make available to people who are not our normal customers. So this isn't one of those situations where we'd be happy to help you, but first you have to sign a contract. Automation is something we will offer to any business of any size who has a project that we think we can provide value on. So if that describes you and you're not sure where to go, or you know where you want to go, but you need some help, please know that we're here. Please know that this is something that hopefully you can clearly tell we're very passionate about, we're very excited about. We think this is important work and we want to help you any way that we can. So with that, I try to leave as much time for questions as possible, comments, thoughts, ideas. As we kind of move into the last few minutes together, what questions do you guys have about either specifically automating onboarding and offboarding, or a more general automation as a topic? So somebody messaged me and asked, if not Microsoft, what are some of the other platforms? There's a number of them. One that probably gets a lot of traction is from like a project management standpoint, like an equivalent of Planner. Asana has been around for a while. Asana is somewhat of a kind of one-to-one relationship with Microsoft Planner. So that can be a good analogy there. On the automation side, there's a company called Make. Make is a very robust, powerful automation platform. It's not cheap, which is why if we can use Microsoft, we will. But if we don't use Microsoft, Make is one of our favorite platforms. And then there are some other lower cost ones that just don't have as many features and functionality. So we can't always get as creative with the solutions. But if the need is pretty simple and you're not on Microsoft, some of those lower cost solutions can be the right answer. And that's part of kind of this due diligence around doing the scope and design of figuring out what is going to be the right set of tools to accomplish the goals and objectives you're trying to accomplish for the right price. Other questions about automation? Somebody's asking, how good is the AI? So the AI is very much going to be dependent on how you train it. If you use out-of-the-box AI, which has basically already been pre-trained, think of it like a puppy. Either you get a puppy that's already trained, in which case it's going to respond to the commands it was taught during its training, or you get a puppy that's untrained, which is a lot of work, but you get to train it however you want. AI is very similar. If you use out-of-the-box AI that's already been trained, you're going to have to conform to the inputs it's expecting. So you might have to structure your questions in a certain way. You might have to approach things in a certain way that allow the AI to do what the AI is programmed to do. If you're going to start from scratch and do your own training, then it's going to take a little while to do that training, just like it would with a puppy. And you're going to have to teach it what a good answer is and what a bad answer is. The more you teach it, the more it learns from you, the smarter it gets, and pretty soon it's doing it on its own. And the same is true of, like, let's say you're trying to automate your accounts payable process. You get invoices emailed to you, you scan invoices that are mailed to you, and you want the AI to be able to just read that invoice, know who the vendor is, know how much money's owed. You want it to just read it like you would and know everything that you would know by looking at it. The first couple of times you give it an invoice, you're going to have to teach it. But once it learns, okay, every time we get a vendor invoice from this company, the invoice number is always here, the name is always here, the amount is always here, this is how they do that. It will learn from that. And the next time it sees that same invoice from that same vendor, it will know exactly what to do with that invoice. And so AI does require a little bit of training, but if you put in the energy to train it, it learns quickly, and that learning then pays you back in tenfold in terms of ROI. Somebody asked, how does ChatGPT play into this? So if you haven't been following the news, you should definitely Google ChatGPT and check it out. This is an amazing piece of AI that kind of shocked the world when it came out, because everyone was expecting Microsoft to not be the industry leader here, but it came out and the Microsoft announced it had a significant financial investment in it, and ChatGPT has the opportunity to have a very significant impact. And now Google's trying to scramble to keep up, because potentially the search engine we've always trusted, Google, to be the best search engine, and Bing we always kind of laughed about, like Bing is kind of the thing you accidentally pull up when you're trying to look for Google. That's not true anymore. With the invention of introduction of ChatGPT into Google search, or Microsoft search engine, forgive me, it is incredibly powerful. And that's that's one small use case of what that technology can do. You've heard teachers complain that students can now ask it to write a term paper for them, and it produces a beautiful term paper. You can have it do research for you. It's an incredibly powerful tool, but it's AI, which means it's only learning based on its training, and it's being trained now. So it's still a little stupid. Sometimes the questions you're going to ask it, it's going to give you wildly incorrect answers, but the technology is incredible. And you play with it for about 5 minutes and your mind literally expands, because you can see where this is going, what the impact of this is going to be long-term. You can start to imagine a world where you might be talking to a human or talking to a robot and thinking it's a human. And that's always been kind of the critical turning point when we start worrying about, like, are the machines going to take over, is when we can't tell the difference between a human and a robot. This is the first major thing that is getting people to think, like, oh my God, have we hit that turning point? Are we there? Is everything about to change? I don't know. It's going to be really exciting and interesting, and maybe just a tiny bit scary to pay attention to. Somebody asked what office plan you need to have to use the features to automate processes. It's all going to come down to what you want to automate. If you want to create a really cool company application that is unique to your business, like we have an app called P3. P3 is our Paragus partner app. And what it lets them do is award recognition points. It allows them to request time off. It allows them to buy swag. There's a bunch of cool things that we want our employees to be able to do. We centralized it all into one app. That's going to require a different level of licensing than just creating a workflow that's going to create a planner for you. If you want to create a planner, probably your typical Microsoft Business Standard, Business Premium license, which is what 80% of the business market has, will give you that functionality. So one of the things that we do during scoping discovery is figure out, what are you trying to automate? What licensing do you have? And do we need to buy any more licenses? If you do have to buy licenses, a lot of times you can just buy relatively inexpensive licenses and add them onto your subscription. And maybe not even for everybody, maybe only for a handful of people. Where it gets more expensive is if you're going to use things like Microsoft's chat engine, or Microsoft's, they call it Data Universe. Those products are more expensive, but the use cases for those are much bigger. That's when you're starting to get to not the low-hanging fruit, but you're doing the really big automation. You're trying to change the company. When you get to that level, you may need to invest in the higher level of Microsoft automation software. But again, the ROI will be justified, because at that level, you're having impact that is going to offset the cost that you're subscribing to. You're either reducing headcount significantly, you're making major transformative changes at that point, and then the cost is going to be justified. But for the simple basic stuff, I would say 70% of the projects we do, we're doing with customers' existing licensing, if they're in the Microsoft platform already. These have all been great questions. Any other questions from anybody? Feel free to unmute if you prefer that, or you can pop in the chat like those of you have been doing. What's the future of this going to look like? So that's a great question, and I wish I knew. The chat GPT thing is big. you could imagine a scenario where things that are being done right now that actually involve thinking might become automated. Right now, the line of automation is we can automate the things that don't need to be thought about. This process gets done, this happens, this transaction, and then we need to bring it back to the human when a decision needs to be made or when something needs to be considered. So we might be able to automate the time off process, but if there's an approval step, we still need to send an approval card to somebody and they need to hit approve or deny. Where this could be going is if ChatGPT or some other technology, Watson is another example, if that introduces thought into the exercise. And I talked about it a little bit with like screening the resumes, but the stakes were pretty low. It was just grading them. It wasn't actually hiring and firing them. But what if a robot was actually hiring your employees? That they were applying, ChatGPT was interviewing them, ChatGPT was deciding whether or not you should hire them, ChatGPT was deciding what their salary should be, ChatGPT was sending up the offer letter, and all you were doing is getting a notification that, hey, you've got a new employee starting on this date, here's their name. That's a level that, like, we're not there yet. It's also not that hard to imagine being there. And I don't know how comfortable we all are with that level of automation. But the good news is, like, let's not worry about that. Let's take it in baby steps. Let's worry about automating this kind of stuff we talked about today. Let's automate the mundane, repetitive, administrative work that nobody wants to be doing. And then we can see where this heads and where it goes. So as somebody asked, who can we follow up with to customize our company's automation? If you're already an existing client, just reach out to your account relationship manager. If you're not an existing client, go to paragusit.com. There's a button to schedule a meeting with us. Just schedule a time. We would love to talk to you. We'll ask you some questions. We'll make sure that we really can help you because we don't want to waste your time if we can't. And if we think we can help you, we'll then let you know what the next step is. As I mentioned, we do have a package that we sell for a flat rate of $750, where we will come into a business and help them figure out what they can automate. Obviously, we're not making any money at $750, but what it is it's an opportunity for us to prove to you that there is things in your business that can be automated and that automation is going to far exceed the cost to do the work to automate them. And so that's a great entry point if you're not sure where to begin. That's a very low cost, low risk way to have us come in and help you figure out what we might be able to do to help you get started on this journey. And again, just if you're not a customer, go to the website, click contact us. If you are a customer, just ask your account relationship manager for that automation assessment package or let them know where you want to start. Any final questions before we wrap up and give you back some time on your Friday? All right, well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in today, for being part of this presentation. If you have follow-up questions after the fact, please do not hesitate to reach out. As you can see, we are passionate about this. We do think it's important. We're excited to help you. If there's anything we can do to make this easier for you, to make this more accessible to you, that's what we're here for. So just reach out and let us know how we can help. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful weekend.